My name is Iris Calder, 28 years old. The night before my brother's wedding, our family dining room in Erie felt more like a courtroom where I was the accused. The roast sat untouched, steam curling in the air, but no one seemed to notice the food. My mom's eyes glittered sharp across the table. My dad kept his gaze on the wine in his glass, and Brent, my older brother, leaned back like a king, preparing to make his final demand. Add lobster tails, he said casually, scrolling on his phone, and the vintage champagne. Lindsay deserves it. Oh, and that photographer from Pittsburgh, the one who shot the governor's gala. I want him here tomorrow. My fork stopped midair. Lobster tails, champagne at $500 a bottle. A photographer who charged more in a day than I made in a month. I'd already spent $10,000 of my own savings, my nest egg, every bit of security I had, on his wedding. Caterers, flowers, the band, the venue. Every detail was covered because I made it happen. I can't, I said evenly. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake, though my chest did. There's no money left. I've already maxed everything. The menu, the band, the flowers, it's all paid for. This is what we have. Brent scoffed, tossing his phone onto the table with a thud. You're always so cheap, Iris. This is my wedding. Make it happen. Joyce, my mom, set her glass down hard, the clink louder than I expected. Her stare cut through me. He's right. This is a once-in-a-lifetime day. Why are you being so selfish? Selfish, the word sliced. Jeffrey, my dad, finally looked up, his tone low but rough. Don't ruin this for your brother. Then his gaze dropped back to his plate as if dismissing me. Heat burned behind my eyes, but I forced myself to breathe. I've spent $10,000, I said, trying again, my words measured. The budget's tapped. Lobster and Napa champagne aren't realistic. I can't do more. Brent leaned toward Lindsay, who sat silent, her fork hovering. See, I told you she'd skimp on us, he muttered loudly enough for me to hear. Lindsay's face flushed, but she didn't speak. Typical Iris, Brent added, smirking, twisting the knife. Something inside me cracked. All the nights I'd pored over seating charts, haggled with vendors, lined every piece up so perfectly, it meant nothing. They didn't see the sacrifice. They never had. Joyce folded her arms, her voice like a verdict. You've always been like this, half-hearted, never stepping up when it matters. Half-hearted? I'd walked away from a $40,000 contract years ago to save our failing family store. I'd built the campaign that doubled our foot traffic, pulled us out of debt. I had been the one stocking shelves at midnight while Brent was at law school, never lifting a finger. And now, half-hearted? Jeffrey nodded, not even meeting my eyes. Brent deserves better than this. The words pressed into me, heavier than the room itself. I set my fork down carefully, my hand steady though my pulse thrashed. I've paid for half this wedding. I've done everything you asked. I can't keep pouring money I don't have into Brent's fantasy. Brent's smirk widened, dripping with disdain. Then maybe you shouldn't be involved at all. Joyce leaned forward, her tone final, cruel in its precision. You know what, Iris? The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lindsay shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Jeffrey just returned to his plate. Brent looked victorious, like he'd won something he didn't even deserve. Vanish. The word rang in my ears, echoing louder than the chandelier's hum above us. I wanted to scream, to throw every sacrifice in their faces. The years I'd bent myself into nothing for their approval, but their expressions, Mom's glare, Dad's indifference, Brent's smug grin, told me it wouldn't matter. So I stood. The chair legs scraped against the hardwood, a sound that felt like a blade drawn. Fine, I said, my voice calm, almost eerily so. If that's what you want. I grabbed my purse, keys jingling in my hand. Don't make a scene, Iris, Joyce snapped, as if I was the embarrassment. But I was already walking. The front door slammed behind me, the sound sharp, final. Cold, eerie air hit my face, but inside I burned. My hand brushed against the metal backup generator key tag dangling from my keyring, a reminder of how I'd planned for every contingency, always the one holding things together. Not anymore. I sat in my car, the steering wheel slick under my palms. Their words replayed like a cruel chorus. Selfish, half-hearted, vanish. Fine. If they wanted me gone, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. I pulled out a notepad from the glove compartment, my pen carving into the paper with steady strokes. At the top, I wrote returns, reversals, recoveries. Tomorrow, they'd see what happened when the shadow they depended on finally disappeared. The morning light in Erie was pale and cold, slipping through the blinds like a judge's gavel. I hadn't slept much, my mother's words still circling like crows. The greatest gift is you vanishing. But instead of crumbling, I woke with a strange clarity. I pulled my notepad closer, the one I'd scrawled on last night. At the top in dark pressed letters, returns, reversals, recoveries. I started dialing. First, the caterer. The line clicked and a cheerful voice answered. Starlight Catering, how can I help you? This is Iris Calder, I said firmly. I need to cancel the order for tomorrow's event and request my deposit refunded. There was a pause. Tomorrow's event? Ms. Calder, that's last minute. I didn't let her finish. Check the contract. Section 7. Cancellation within 72 hours. With written notice still entitles me to a partial refund. I have the signed copy. Another pause, then a sigh. I'll process it today. When I hung up, my pulse was racing, but I felt lighter. One line on my ledger, catering. $3,500 recovered. Next, the florist. The shop smelled of roses and lilies when I'd first walked in weeks ago, hoping the flowers would dazzle Brent's guests. Now I dialed their number with a steady hand. Iris Calder, canceling the Reed Ellis wedding order, I said. A woman stammered. But the roses have already been shipped. I'll pay the freight cost, I said quickly, but the rest is refundable. Again, contract clause 8. I'll email you the paperwork. By the end of the call, another refund secured. Florist, $2,000 recovered. The band was trickier. The leader sounded defensive, even offended. We've already turned down another gig for this date, Iris. You can't just cancel and expect money back. I took a breath, steadied myself. I can, and I will. The check hasn't cleared yet. Stop payment is already in motion. You're welcome to sue, but the venue contract covers force majeure. Do you really want this fight? A beat of silence, then, fine. Ledger, band, $2,500 saved. By noon, I had clawed back nearly $8,000 of my $10,000, and the rest would trickle in. I stared at the numbers, each stroke of ink like a wound stitched shut. For the first time, the wedding wasn't mine to hold together. It was theirs to lose. And yet, beneath the satisfaction, grief churned. I thought of all the nights I'd spent bent over contracts and seating charts, cross-checking vendors, pouring my savings into Brent's day, hoping, naively, that it might finally buy their recognition. I closed my eyes, and memory carried me backward, years earlier. I was 24, sitting in my small apartment, clutching a letter of agreement, a $40,000 contract with a major supermarket chain to revamp their ad campaign. My first big break as a freelance marketer. My chest had buzzed with possibility, independence, recognition, the start of my own future. Then the phone rang. Iris! Mom's voice cracked, trembling in a way that instantly stole my breath. We're drowning. The store. We can't pay vendors. We're weeks from closing. Dad came on next, the first time I'd ever heard defeat in his tone. We may lose everything. The pen slipped from my hand. By midnight, I drafted a cancellation email to the supermarket rep, killing the $40,000 deal. Instead, I poured myself into the family store. I designed flyers by candlelight, pushed ads on local radio, handed out coupons outside high schools. I charmed vendors into one more month of credit. I even invested $5,000 of my savings, patching gaps so the lights stayed on. I remember the night foot traffic finally doubled, the cash registers ringing like salvation. I'd stood in the aisle, tears in my eyes, certain that this, finally, was the moment they'd see me. But weeks later, in a family meeting, Mom's smile glowed at Brent instead. We're handing the store to him, she said proudly. He's a lawyer. He's got the head for this. Brent hadn't lifted a single box. He hadn't even been in Erie. And yet, he smirked as they gave him my victory. You did okay, Iris, he'd said with a shrug, adjusting his tie. Okay. The fluorescent lights had hummed overhead that night, drowning out my silence. Back in the present, I snapped my notebook shut. I wasn't that girl anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan, my best friend since college. You doing all right? I typed back quickly. Better than ever. They wanted me gone, so I'm gone. Just not empty-handed. He replied instantly. Good. Don't let them twist this. Keep proof of every deposit you took back. I glanced at the folder of contracts, neatly stacked, time-stamped emails printing from my machine. Evidence, protection. By late afternoon, the venue coordinator called, panic lacing her tone. Iris, we can still save tomorrow if you just wire another $6,000. I can line up backup caterers, a DJ, even quick florals. Please, let's salvage this. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. No, I said quietly. It's not my wedding anymore. I hung up and scribbled the last line of the day on my ledger. Control, recovered. The wedding morning dawned gray. Erie's sky heavy with clouds that pressed low, like even the weather knew what was coming. I woke early, not to primp or prepare, but to sit by my window with coffee cooling in my hands, listening to the quiet. My phone vibrated once, then again, then nonstop. By 9, the storm hit. The first voicemail, a shrill voice from the venue coordinator. Guests are arriving and there's no food delivery. Where are the caterers? The second, Brent, his voice nearly cracking with rage. What the hell did you do, Iris? Where's the band? Where's the photographer? You've ruined everything. By the 5th call, I stopped listening. I leaned back in my chair and let their panic wash past me like rain on glass. At the venue, chaos unfolded. Guests walked into a hollow ballroom. White tablecloths bare, no centerpieces, no music. The air conditioner hummed in the silence where a quartet should have been. The stage sat empty, the dance floor yawning, cold. Relatives whispered as they took their seats. Where's the food? Didn't they say a band was coming? Lindsay, in her gown, clutched her bouquet of limp supermarket carnations, someone's desperate last-minute scramble. Her eyes darted everywhere but Brent. He was red-faced, storming across the room, barking at staff who had nothing to give him. Fix this! Get anyone! Call a DJ, for God's sake! Sir, there's no backup booked, a young assistant stammered. Brent's voice carried. My sister sabotaged us. She's jealous, and now she's ruined my wedding. The word spread like spilled wine. By evening, his story hit the local forum. The headline read, My own sister destroyed my wedding out of spite. His post was venom dressed as confession. She's always been bitter, never happy for me. She canceled everything. Caterers, flowers, band, just to humiliate us. Imagine your own blood doing this to you on the most important day of your life. Comments poured in within minutes. Neighbors, old classmates, even distant relatives. She's always been strange. Unhinged. Who sabotages family like that? Joyce chimed in, her words twisting the knife. She's always been trouble. This is who Iris is. Dad stayed silent, but his absence screamed agreement. I read the thread in my apartment, my stomach curdling with each new post. Part of me wanted to reply, to blast the truth. I funded half this circus. I poured $10,000 into it. I canceled because you told me to vanish. But what was the point? They weren't interested in truth. They were interested in protecting the golden boy, keeping their narrative neat. Instead, I closed my laptop. My decision was already made. I spent that night at my office, the small rented room downtown where I kept my freelance work. I packed my files, my laptop, the few trinkets I'd collected. Then I signed a contract with a local agency, selling my client list for $25,000. The pen barely shook in my hand. That money, combined with the refunded deposits, was enough to start fresh. One call remained, the family store. For years, I'd patched its leaks with my energy, my campaigns, my savings. I'd invested $5,000 outright, cash that had kept vendors from pulling out during its worst drought. Tonight, I called the bank and withdrew every cent. I didn't warn Joyce or Jeffrey. I didn't leave a note. They'd made their choice when they told me to vanish. The store could fend for itself now, or fall. Either way, it wasn't my weight to carry. On my way out, I stopped at the store one last time. The parking lot was dark, a single flickering light above the entrance, buzzing in the quiet. Inside, the fluorescent bulbs hummed, same as they had the night they gave the store to Brent. The aisles smelled faintly of stale cereal and detergent. I walked slowly, letting the sound settle in my chest. At the back office, I left a binder on the desk, the marketing campaigns, the ads that had saved them once. It wasn't sentimentality, it was closure. A ledger of the love I'd once tried to prove in neat, laminated pages. On my way out, my eye caught something on the manager's desk, a past-due invoice from a florist. But what froze me wasn't the amount. It was the name on the account, Iris Kaldar. My stomach clenched. The misspelling was obvious, but the address was my parents', not mine. And the handwriting on the envelope, the careful loops, was Joyce's. Had she opened an account in my name? A small one, maybe just for wedding flowers, or maybe more. I tucked the invoice into my bag, my pulse hammering. Outside, the wind off Lake Erie bit at my face. Tomorrow, I'd be gone. My ticket to Asheville already booked, 2 suitcases packed and waiting. But as I drove away, the hum of the fluorescents followed me, louder than ever. The bus wound through the Appalachian foothills, the Blue Ridge stretching like a watercolor painting across the horizon. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, my suitcases tucked under the seat, my whole life condensed into 2 bags and a folder of contracts. Erie was shrinking in the rear view, but the echo of their voices still clung to me. Vanish. You're trouble. You're selfish. Asheville greeted me with sunlight spilling between mountain peaks. My apartment was small, 1 bedroom above a quiet bookstore downtown. The walls were bare, the floor scuffed, but when I set my bags down and opened the window, the breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh bread. It smelled like possibility. My first night, I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, eating takeout pad thai from a carton, my laptop glowing. I sent out 3 proposals for freelance work. Ad campaigns for a brewery, a boutique, and a hiking gear shop. By morning, 2 had written back. Asheville wasn't Erie. Here, my skills weren't invisible. They were currency. Days blurred into a rhythm. Coffee at the bakery downstairs. Afternoons writing slogans in cafes. Evenings sketching watercolor landscapes of the mountains. I started hiking on weekends, each climb pulling the weight of Erie off my shoulders. On Black Balsam Knob, the view opened endless and wild, and for the first time in years, I thought, this is mine, not theirs, mine. But even in freedom, shadows traveled with me. One morning, I found a letter slipped under my apartment door. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. My mother's loops, careful and practiced. Iris, it began, I've been diagnosed with something serious. I don't have much time. Your father and I are lost without you. Please come home. We need you. The store needs you. Your brother needs you. We can't do this without you. I read it twice, the words tugging at old wounds. Sick, dying, need you. It was the same melody as always. Different verses, same refrain. My chest tightened, but the ache wasn't the same as before. It was softer, familiar. A trap disguised as love. I took the letter to Shirley Bennett, the bakery owner who had taken me under her wing. Her laugh was loud enough to rattle the pastry cases, but when she read the note, her face hardened. This smells like manipulation, she said flatly, sliding the letter back. People don't change their tune that quick, not unless they want something. Later, I called Nathan. His voice cracked through the line, warm and steady. She's pulling the same trick, Iris. She wants to drag you back. Don't let her. I sat with their words that night. The letter spread on my desk beside my watercolor paints. The mountains I'd sketched earlier looked soft, unbroken, untouched by Erie's weight. I drafted a reply in my journal before copying it onto a plain card. I wish you well, but I'm not coming back. The next morning, I slipped it into the mailbox, sealed, final. Then I blocked their numbers. It wasn't easy. My hand trembled as I pressed the screen, cutting off the last thread. A part of me still ached for the family I'd wanted them to be. But I knew better now. Staying tethered to their chaos would only erode the peace I was building. When I told Shirley, she poured me coffee and squeezed my hand. You're choosing you, she said. That's the hardest, bravest thing. Nathan's voice echoed the same truth during our next call. You're free now. Don't look back. For the first time, I believed them. Months passed, and Asheville wrapped around me like a second skin. The mornings carried the scent of fresh bread from Shirley's bakery. The afternoons hummed with chatter in the cafes where I met clients, and the nights belonged to the quiet glow of my desk lamp as I sketched campaigns or painted mountain skylines. My income grew steady, $3,000 a month, sometimes more. Enough to cover rent, groceries, and little luxuries like concert tickets or hiking boots. Every invoice paid wasn't just money, it was proof that I didn't need their approval to be whole. But Erie hadn't vanished, it had rotted. News trickled in through Nathan. The family store, once barely afloat under my hands, had collapsed within weeks of my leaving. Suppliers stopped delivering. Shelves stood half empty. Customers drifted away. Brent, with his lawyer's arrogance, couldn't navigate inventory or vendor negotiations. Joyce tried stepping in, but the numbers were too much. Jeffrey retreated to his armchair, muttering blame at anyone who walked by. Bankruptcy filings followed. The store's doors locked for good. Nathan's texts were blunt. "They're drowning without you." I never replied. But the ripples spread. Joyce and Jeffrey, stripped of savings, sold the family house. They moved into a cramped apartment on the edge of town, their pride shriveled with every box carried up the narrow stairwell. Neighbors who once admired their respectable family business now crossed the street to avoid them. Brent fared worse. His fiancée, Lindsay, dissolved the engagement quietly. He took a job at a hardware store, a fall from grace no charm could disguise. People whispered about the wedding fiasco, the bankrupt store, the sister who vanished. His smirk, once his shield, no longer fooled anyone. Through it all, I stayed silent. I didn't send sympathy cards, didn't answer their calls. My blocked inbox still tried to notify me of their voicemails. One day, curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Joyce's voice cracked, low and trembling. "Iris, please, we've lost everything. We were wrong. Come home. We need you." I sat by my window, the Blue Ridge peaks painted pink by sunset, and I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered aloud what I wished I'd said at that dinner table. "You told me to vanish. You got your wish." Asheville filled the empty spaces Erie had carved out of me. I joined a hiking group, laughter carrying across trails as we climbed ridge after ridge. I started painting again, watercolors bleeding into blues and greens, my apartment walls blooming with landscapes instead of silence. Shirley's bakery became my second home. Her booming laugh, her flour-dusted hugs, they softened the edges of my solitude. One evening, as I cleaned brushes at my kitchen sink, Nathan called. His voice, warm as always, carried a smile. "I saw your tourism campaign ad on Facebook," he said. "Billboards too, huh? You're killing it." I laughed, the sound real, not forced. "Feels like I'm finally building something that's mine." "You are," he said, "and they'll never take that away again." I hung up and stood at the window, watching city lights flicker against the dark ridges. Erie was behind me, unraveling in its own mess. And I was here, in a city that let me breathe. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't their shadow. I was Iris Calder. And for the first time, that was enough. Spring in Asheville carried a softness Erie never had. The air was threaded with wildflowers and the hum of street musicians playing for coins downtown. By then, my life had taken root. My freelance business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I had 5 steady contracts, a brewery, a bookstore, an art gallery, a cafe, and a hiking gear shop. My name floated through the small business scene, passed from one grateful owner to another. For once, I was recognized not as Brent's sister or Joyce's daughter, but simply as Iris. At Shirley's bakery, I'd sit by the window with my laptop, sipping coffee she refused to let me pay for. "Fuel for the grind," she'd say, sliding a muffin my way. One evening after closing, she leaned across the counter, her eyes soft. "You're different now, lighter. Like you finally know you don't owe them a damn thing." She was right. I no longer checked Erie's news, no longer flinched at my phone. The silence from Joyce and Jeffrey was deliberate now, our last thread cut. Brent's lone email, a furious paragraph blaming me for the store's collapse, sat unread in my trash folder. And still I carried no guilt. Because here, in Asheville, I had found a new kind of family. Shirley's laughter, Nathan's long-distance calls, his steady faith in me, the hiking group cheering when I reached a summit, clients who thanked me for campaigns that saved their shops. These were my people, people who saw me. One crisp evening, I hiked to Craggy Pinnacle with the group. The mountains unfolded beneath us in rolling blue waves. I stood at the edge, wind tugging at my jacket, and thought of Erie, the empty aisles, the boarded-up storefront, the wedding hall stripped bare. Their empire had crumbled, not because of me, but because they had built it on sand, on favoritism, denial, and a refusal to see worth where it truly lived. For so long, I had begged them to notice me, to say, "We're proud of you. We see you." But up here, with the mountains breathing steady and vast, I realized I didn't need it anymore. Their silence was no longer a wound. It was freedom. That night, back in my apartment, I pinned my latest watercolor to the wall, a sweep of mountains in indigo and gold. Underneath it, in small, deliberate letters, I wrote, "Family isn't who you're born to. It's who lets you breathe." I closed my journal, my chest light. The girl who once poured $10,000 into a wedding to earn love was gone. In her place stood someone whole, independent, seen. I wasn't their shadow anymore. I was my own light.